There is a fundamental problem with the investment thesis for Cathie Wood's Roku. And my subjective, nuanced beliefs around content and content consumption might bleed into my analysis here, especially because I have very particular, biased ideas around content and content consumption. I'm going to try to make them as objective as possible. Roku is a content consumption platform, so obviously that's going to impact how I feel about the investment thesis. But I do feel that my thoughts are incredibly important for understanding the bear case long-term of Roku. Now, before I get into it, I'm not going to be making any analysis on the numbers, because to be honest, the numbers are quite literally screaming that this stock might be worth a buy. It's trading at a $7 billion market cap. The price of sales is around 2.5. They did about $3 billion in revenue. Their watch hours increased from 21 to, I think, 21.3 billion hours or it was minutes or hours. Whatever it is, it was a lot of time that was being watched last quarter, Q3 2022, on the Roku platform. I have a broader problem. And, this problem can be applied to how I think about investing in something like a Netflix. Netflix gets 2 billion visits per month. Netflix is the king of streaming. When people think about Netflix, they think, why wouldn't I invest in that? If they're spending $17 billion a year, they're going to have the best content in the world. People are going to watch it. It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. I have a different belief system here. And that different belief system ultimately impacts the way I think about these stocks. And again, it is biased, but overall, that is the nature of my thesis, even though the numbers on Roku might be screaming that it's a good buy. The problem is Cathie Wood was buying it at like $300-$400, and I don't know if it goes from 56 to 400. Cathie Wood thinks the bear case is like 700. So I don't know if that's going to happen. Some of those numbers are a bit egregious in terms of this like 30% CAGR return on one equity. Doesn't really happen like that all the time, unless you're really disruptive like Tesla. But nonetheless, forget the numbers. The biggest issue I have with Roku, and it's actually pretty simple at the end of the day. Roku wants to become a content platform that's not just rooted in being the operating system for TVs, but is also rooted in what they call the Roku channel. Now, if you listen to Anthony Wood, the CEO, talk about the Roku channel, his vision is that Roku becomes a content behemoth. His vision is that Roku ultimately ups their spend quarter after quarter on original content, and that original content, because it is on the Roku device, and Roku has done a pretty phenomenal job in terms of market penetration and making sure that they are the standard operating system. Now, they've got a lot of competition. Obviously, you've got Google TVs, you've got Apple TVs, you've got Samsung and their own OS for TVs. I have a Roku TV, and it's easy to use, but it's not some phenomenal OS that I wouldn't use another TV OS over. It's good, it's better, but it's not that crazy, right? But nonetheless, they've done a pretty good job with penetrating. Their argument is that if they are on all the TVs, if they are the platform that people use to be able to consume content, why doesn't it make sense that they just offer their own original programming? Because think what happens when you offer your own original programming. It's the same sort of concept as if you choose to go to Substack and write your articles, and Substack takes a 10% fee of every paid subscription you have, or you make your own website and you figure out a way to drive traffic and get people to subscribe internally on your Squarespace hosted website, where you pay Squarespace like $20 a month to host the website, and that's pretty cheap compared to every single sale you get from the website now is taken from a platform like Substack because you use them. Now, why do you use a platform like Substack? Because it's convenient, because it's easy, because a lot of people know how to access it, because they've already built up a brand recognition and brand awareness. So it's relatively simple. If you are a news provider, why would I use YouTube? Because not only is all the traffic on YouTube, but also they make it really simple to distribute video. So conveniency and simplicity definitely wins. But Roku has this deal with all these other content platforms that are using their OS as a way for people to access Netflix, access HBO, access Paramount Plus, access Apple TV. What happens if Roku just gives them the content? At that point, the advertising margins start to increase a lot more than if they're taking a split with an ad buyer for HBO Max or for Netflix or for Disney Plus, which now introduced ads. And you stay in the Roku system. If you're in the Roku ecosystem, boom, you turn on the Roku, you get a great experience because you consumed original Roku content, which means you're going to consume original Roku content again in the future. You're getting hooked onto the system. The engagement metrics leads you to come back and back again. And maybe when you click on Roku, you don't click on Netflix or Amazon Prime immediately. You click on the Roku channel. You click on what they call Roku One. That is the master plan for Anthony Wood. And make no mistake about it, I have heard Cathie and Ark and her little minions of research animals talk about the investment thesis, and they are very steady that as linear declines and people start cutting the cord, they're going to be going to platforms like Roku, and part of the consumption pattern they believe will be on original content from Roku because Roku has the distribution, right? They already are in everyone's houses, and as a result of being in everyone's houses, they're going to be able to give them original content. That is where I think is the bear case for Roku. So again, I think Roku is undervalued on the technical levels if you just look at numbers. But if I'm talking about a long-term investment, Roku has to get content right. Roku has to be incredibly successful in making sure that they provide such high quality, valuable content that people want to watch Roku content. People want to watch the ads as they're watching Roku content. People feel an affinity, an emotional reaction, some type of intimacy towards the Roku network channel brand. And not just as an OS, because as an OS, it's great, but as an OX, is it going to 1720x the way Cathie Wood thinks? No, it has to own the means of distribution and own the content that it's distributing and then get the very high ad revenues as a result of owning that content and not splitting it with a provider like Netflix. That's where I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. And as a result of that, I'm not investing in Roku. It's the same reason I don't invest in Netflix. My thesis is that user-generated content is the future. And it's not that hard to understand. We, as human beings, like other human beings. We have an affinity towards people that are able to communicate with us and have an authentic relation. I host a market open every morning from 9:20 to 10 a.m. and about 250 people show up. I mean, those 250 people could be watching CNBC. They could be watching Good Morning America. They could be watching Bloomberg, but they're watching me, a guy who's 25 years old in his parents' house with these bricks that don't even line up, talking about the stock market. And I'm not even the best investor in the world. Now, there's a reason I think people relate to that, because they might not be the best investors in the world. I don't have millions of dollars. They might not have millions of dollars. I'm just trying to figure it out. And I'm a little bit well-spoken, so maybe they kind of enjoy that, and they're just trying to figure it out. So there's a connection there. There's millions of people, if not one day billions of people, as more and more people start to enter the World Wide Web that don't even have access to internet yet, that will want to communicate, that will want to express themselves, that will want to create content, that will want to get their ideas out into the world. And the platforms that accelerate the discovery of that content are going to be the platforms of the future. Those are the platforms I want to bet on. I would 1000% bet on YouTube over something like a Netflix or a Roku. And so Roku falls into the same bucket that I think a lot of these companies fall into, which is they have to pay a lot for content. Netflix spends $17 billion a year. Some of that content will be great. A lot of that content will not. And the difference is on YouTube, 95% of videos that are uploaded are pretty bad, but the 5% that are uploaded, because there's 500 hours of video uploaded per minute, are actually incredibly helpful, entertaining, informative, personable, some of them incredibly high quality. I mean, if I wanted to watch a dating show the other day, YouTube had a great, slew of dating shows versus something like a Netflix that has to pay a lot of money to overly produce this thing, whereas some random people in their, apartment in New York City can pull up a dating show, which is something I discovered. And it has search. I mean, it's the second largest search engine in the world underneath the first largest search engine. This is not just the bull case for YouTube. This is rather an argument that something like Roku does not have universal search. Something like Netflix cannot have universal search. You know why? Because a search engine gives you results that the engine has generated from users' content. Netflix, Roku, HBO Max, they have to pay for their content. So if you search Batman on YouTube or Batman on TikTok or Batman on Instagram, you get an infinite amount of Batman content because users posted that content, and as a result of posting that content, the platforms give discovery to those users, which is this supply and demand and sort of the day trading of attention at scale. Roku and Netflix cannot do that, and as a result of that, the premium value that you put on content for a platform like Roku or Netflix or Paramount Plus or HBO, to me, is going to be undervalued in the next 10 years. I just don't think people care that much about premium. Now, a lot of people want to watch that stuff. I'm not saying they don't. But from a daily active user's perspective, from a universality perspective, from a search perspective, from a recommendation engine perspective, it's going to be incredibly difficult to compete with these platforms that just have infinite amounts of content being uploaded every second, and that's only going to increase as more people join online. So when Roku says their bull case is, hey, we're the Roku channel and, we're going to make original content and we have this distribution and people are going to watch it. Number one, is it even going to be good? Number two, are people going to really watch whatever you create over something like a Netflix, which is like the premier leader when it comes to OTT, premium content? And number four, are people actually going to click that over user-generated content through algorithms that know them so well on platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.? Because all of these platforms are competing for attention, and the type of experience you get on a Roku TV, I just don't feel is the same as the type of content that is uploaded to a platform like YouTube. My long-term bull case cannot be constructed on a platform that has to spend billions of dollars for content that will be irrelevant the day after it is distributed, and that ultimately is not going to keep users hooked on the site because it's not coming in constantly like a user-generated content engine is, which is my problem with Roku. I think it's undervalued. I think Cathie will get somewhat of a return on it at buying at this level. But I think, buying at 300-400 and expecting it to go from 50 to 400 again in the next 5 years, just because people are cutting the cord, is not the correct thesis given how unbelievably competitive content is and how unbelievably important user-generated content ultimately is for people to discover. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Do you think there's a bull case for Roku, or do you ultimately think that Roku is a great standard TV operating system and it's a modern one, but it's not going to be a behemoth for content that's going to capture people's attention and then allow them to monetize it on the back end? Thanks so much for listening and watching. I'll see you on the next one.